As soon as that behavior occurred, gaslighting and demeaning behavior, I just stood up. I stood up. I thanked the people for their time. Thank you so much for your time as witnesses here. I no longer allow myself to be abused. And I left.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Prey vs. Predator. We are so happy that you are here. We're talking about being nice and how being nice to others can very often result in us not being very nice to ourselves. PJ is so brilliant. She's come up with this nice behavior cycle, and she's going to be taking us through it today. We're just going to talk about killing nice before it kills us. So PJ, give us what you've got.
Jill, I pay extra for those compliments.
Well, I guess
so. Thank you for that. Okay, so thank you for setting that up. We are talking about being nice. We have so many names for nice in our culture, and they all sound so lovely. We have polite, proper, respectable, well-mannered, kind, thoughtful, good, especially good girl. I think we could probably sit here and think of a few more. And even though nice sounds good, it probably feels good for most of us, and it looks really good. I want to talk today. I thought we could talk about what's wrong with being nice, and how being nice and how being nice automatically is dangerous for your mental health and sometimes even for your physical well-being. So let's talk a little bit about some of the assumptions. I know, Amber, you had some ideas on some of the hidden assumptions of being nice.
If we're nice, then others will be nice in return, right?
So we think, yeah.
So we think that nice is the best way to conduct our lives. We need to be nice to be a good person, you know? Nice is always the most appropriate response to something maybe difficult.
Well, and the customer is always right.
Yes,
Customer service industry,
nice
we're all about
wins.
creating a hospitable environment for sure.
And I think too, we train children to we link nice and kindness, and I think that they are not really linked. So you can be kind, but maybe kindness isn't always looking nice. But we train children to be nice. I think it's almost a quiet control, right? If somebody is nice, then we can just get on with things and it's good. It's good. Being not nice is bad.
Right.
You know, we don't want to be not nice. And mostly that people will like us. They will like me. And I'm guilty of this. If I'm not nice, people will think I'm rude, or people will not want to be around me. Or
and being female, like, you're a bitch if you're not nice.
Totally.
And I don't want to be seen as being bitchy, so therefore.
And I think a lot of us women, it's uncomfortable to not be nice. So of course we don't want to be uncomfortable.
It doesn't occur to me that I can be anything other than being nice.
Right.
Or that I should be anything other than nice.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, and this opens up exactly the thing that we want to talk about, is that idea of it's automatic. We sort of automatically, and Amber, you were saying, you know, for us as women, and that makes a ton of sense, for women and children in particular, like Jill, you said, we're labeled as bitches, right? Or children are labeled as rude. So if somebody asks a child a question that they don't want to answer, and the child says, I don't want to answer that question, or I don't feel comfortable, you would think that child was being rude. And, you know, I think underneath some of those hidden assumptions, I wonder if one of the main hidden assumptions is this idea that if I'm nice, you'll be nice. Any thoughts about that?
Well, I think that's true.
Well, it's a golden rule, right?
Well, yeah.
Is it? Yeah.
What is it? What is the golden rule?
Be nice unto others so they're nice unto you.
Right. Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Yeah. But it's true. You do assume that if you can, you know, if you get into a situation where somebody's a little bit more difficult, if you're nice, you have a hope that they're just going to be nice back.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not the case. Well, if you're driving, you let somebody in, they're going to let you in. But no, that's not how it works.
So I think, like, because we're prey versus predator, prey are nice. Just generally, prey are tend to be the people who are really nice. And it's not that predators can't be nice, because, they are also, they can also appear really nice. But I want to explore, if we can, a little bit about like, how do predators, so prey are nice just because we're by nature and nurture sort of nice people. We want people to like us. We have all these great assumptions, and we think other people think like us. And so, as we've been pretty clear here, predators do not think like us. So predators will use anything that's automatic, like niceness, to their advantage. So can we talk a little bit about how predators use nice against us as prey for their advantage? Because once we know this, then we can talk about maybe what we can do.
So I want clarification. Are you saying that predators expect us to be nice, or do they pretend to be nice in order to get what they want? Both those could be true.
Yeah, I think both of those.
And I think part of the reason why predators are attracted to us is because we are nice.
Right. Yeah. But there's this automatic piece to it where it's like we don't know how not to be.
Right.
Yes.
And so
it's been trained out of us, honestly. I think as children, we have a reaction. We cry or we pull it back if a kid takes a thing, and we're trained that that's not what you do. Even though, like I just keep thinking about being like an 8-year-old girl and coming off of, I don't know, a bus or something, and there was a boy and he was calling me names. And I took my backpack off and I whacked him hard. Well, guess who got in trouble?
You did.
I did, because I wasn't being nice.
You weren't being nice.
But the boy was the one calling me names and really getting in my way. Like he was standing in front of me and like blocking me. And I had to he was blocking me. But I got in trouble because I wasn't being nice. So I think it starts so young, rather than somebody coming in going, hey, why did you do that? Well, he's blocking me and he's calling me this. Okay, let's have a conversation about that, as well as maybe violence isn't the answer. But let's have a conversation.
That's a great example, because as opposed to teaching you, what do you do when somebody's not being nice to you? Because it doesn't sound like that the boy's not niceness was being identified. And wasn't the point. The point was you are always to be nice, irregardless of what is done to you.
Right.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So how, in that's like the young boy, let's hope, was not predatory.
No, I don't think he was. Like ultimately he had a really good, Yeah.
But it probably
they did side with him.
Right. So, but let's say it was like somebody like in an older situation where the person is predatory. How do predators use nice? Because predators see you coming a mile away, as we've talked about. They feel and sense that you have this automatic niceness. So can we talk a little bit about how the predators use nice? You're nice against you, like a weapon.
Well, I think they push boundaries. So if they want something from you, and I can speak to this, and it's in my own life right now, I see somebody that I would call a predator. And I know there's other people that respond to this person with niceness, and this predator will get more and more and more and more from this person because they won't say no to them. So you gave me an inch. Oh, that was nice, but I really want 5 inches. Oh, you're going to give me 5 inches. Oh, yeah, thank you. You're so nice.
I want 2 feet.
Yeah, I want 2 feet now. Oh, you don't have 2 feet? What's wrong with you? Why don't you give me 2 feet?
It's not very nice.
No, it's not very nice. I'm just asking. So that's where I see it. And I know I'm using metaphors, but I need to protect my life.
Well, I can think of people asking me to co-sign loans for them.
Really?
Or to loan them money, because I seemed like someone who would do something like that. And it often didn't occur to me that I could say no, because if I have the means, well, of course.
Because you want to be nice.
That? It just never occurred to me otherwise.
To not be.
To not be, or to say no. Like, that's not even an option.
Well, okay, so I think that this is sort of the heart of what we want to get at, is because when the predator senses that you have this sort of automatic reaction to be nice or to be, generous, kind, giving, you see how easy it is to ask for more, to to be upset when you don't give more. And then there's an element I would say there's an element of surprise. So you're as prey, you're nice by nature. You only ever practice being nice. You don't practice being mean. You don't practice being
having boundaries.
Having boundaries. You don't practice
or saying the word no.
Or you don't practice saying no.
Yeah.
So when you do say no, what happens for prey, they get their niceness gets them in a trap, but when it's used by a predator to the point where they start to get angry. And then they use the anger energy that they have to give them sort of themselves permission to say no. So this idea like where, I've asked for a loan and then I want more money and then I want more things and then I want suddenly after all the yeses might come some anger and then the anger might bubble up until you.
Like Sarma.
Yeah.
In Bad Vegan. Yeah.
Great example.
Yeah.
Great example. And then you finally say no, but you say it with anger. Because that's what it took to finally find a way of not being nice. But then it feels bad. You feel bad.
Mm-hmm. That's what I was thinking about is it's not comfortable if you've spent your whole life being nice and you've been told maybe when you're a kid you did the wrong thing or a teenager, you're being a bitch or whatever. So you get so tied to it that it's uncomfortable saying no. You don't even know how to sometimes.
Right.
You don't even know how, but it feels bad. And it doesn't help that maybe the predator will be like, oh, you're being mean now.
Exactly.
You're being mean. Oh, and then you're like, it does feel mean.
Or greedy.
It feels greedy. It feels gross to say no because it's upsetting you. It's upsetting me because I want to, but I have nothing left to give. And now I'm angry and I'm not comfortable with that either. And maybe you become... to the predator, if they use rage, look, you're angry too.
Yeah.
You're angry too. And it's like, yeah, but you're manipulating me to become angry. And this is the only way I can get you to stop.
Well, and let's use some real life examples. Like, where do you see this happen in real life?
Okay, so I do a lot of things. And because I have many projects on the go, people will often ask me to take on another project. Often, it just doesn't occur to me that I could say no. And this summer, I had an epiphany. And my epiphany was, I have nothing to prove to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And that was such a, I don't know, it might sound like it was very significant for me.
Freeing, actually.
It was so freeing because it actually gave me permission to be able to say no to something. Like I feel like I have done so much in my life, especially after experiencing great losses, to get on the hamster wheel and just go and just go and just go and just go and just go. And when will it ever be enough? It never will be enough.
No, it's never.
And at the end of the day, I have nothing to prove to anybody.
So that gave you permission to not be nice?
It gave me permission to say no. I was beginning to see the toll it took on my body to always say yes. To run ragged. A lot of people, like if you're living in a constant state of stress, you develop diabetes when you're older. It's just those heightened cortisol levels just aren't good. So, often the kindest thing that you can do for yourself is to say no. But people are like, what? Like, I'm giving you this tremendous opportunity. Why wouldn't you say yes? I just don't have to prove myself to you anymore.
I love that.
That's so good. Yeah, I had a bit of an epiphany the other day, too, I was listening to a book, and it was all about narcissists or whatever, and the author said something like, her therapist had said to her, it's not what they say, it's how it lands for you. And I went, oh, because there's somebody in my life right now, and how it's landing, what they're doing and saying is, I'm not doing enough. I'm not doing enough. And I stopped and I just thought that out and I went, oh, no. I am doing more than enough at this point. I am doing more than enough. I'm allowed to say no. I don't, maybe not right now. Sorry. We're going to look into it in the future, but I'm allowed to say no, not right now. I'm okay with that. But I was also thinking of an example where I didn't handle it so great. And this was like as a performer, I was backstage with somebody who was performing in the thing that we were both doing. And they were the star of the show, and they were having a meltdown about another person in the cast, and just complaining about them. And all of us in the room were just quiet and letting this person do this. And I had an instant, because I felt like nobody else was speaking up, and just like, you don't need to, like, everybody was tiptoeing. And I couldn't.
Nice.
They were all being nice and like, oh, that's so hard. Yeah, this person is a jerk. This person is awful. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, this person isn't great, but you're also behaving poorly.
Mm.
And so I did say something of that ilk to this person. And I tried to do it in a very kind way, but just like, hey, like, you got to look at it from this point of view. They lost their mind and started screaming and crying. And everybody was looking at me like, how could you do this? You're so mean.
Oh,
yeah, you were
Amber.
not nice.
Yeah. And the irony is that this person was being horrible about the initial person they were talking about. So now they're reacting to me like anyways, it came out. And even my closest friend at the time said to me, well, I think you should say sorry. I think you should say sorry. And I was like, but why? I didn't say anything mean to this person. I didn't call them a name. I didn't do anything. All I did was try to remind them of the other person's humanity, and maybe the fact that they don't need to be upset so much and make everybody tiptoe around them. All that to say, the next day, my good friend came back and said, I think you're right. There was no need to say sorry. But I had, upon reaction, when I saw this person later on, I said, yeah, sorry about it. Came out of my face and out of my mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And they had already moved on.
Mm-hmm.
They had a reaction. Everybody was like crowding around. Oh, yeah, look at, Amber's such a bitch, And my reaction was sorry. That was the first thing I said. And I regret it. As soon as it came out of my face, I was like, no, take back. But so that's one of those situations I wish I could go back and kind of just own it.
Right.
Own the bitchiness. Own that maybe everybody in that room thought I was being a real big ass, which is ironic because the original person was the bitch to begin with, but somehow I was the bitch to call out the bitchiness. I don't know. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Well, I think that's a great example where you have a predatory person who is throwing down a fit, being angry and upset, and just feeling like it's acceptable for them to just slam and lambaste everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's job is to try to make them okay and be
everybody
nice.
Was quiet and like,
because they're upset. And the second that you step in with any kind of thing other than nice, because of that person's because of the predator's reaction toward you, it sounds like everybody got mad at you for not being nice.
But they were not mad at the other person who was the freaking star of the show, who should have been known better.
And I know this is going to be another one of the topics that we cover in our podcast, but we'll talk about separation abuse and post-separation abuse. But one of the things I think is a great example of this is when a predator sends mean texts or texts that are sort of embedded with these kind of nasty, cold, mean kind of comments. And should the prey kind of bite back with anything that looks even remotely not nice, then when somebody like a judge or a lawyer or a parental capacity examiner look at this, then they look at that and go, look, you weren't nice.
Yeah, you're not nice too.
You're not nice too. And so
if this was in writing, I would say no.
Right? Like there's all these kind of ways. Like I even think about like predators when they go after kids and how they kind of hook kids in because kids don't have a language for not nice. right? Or I think about like when predators sort of stalk their prey, and they, the person has said like, listen, I just want space. I just want you to. They've really risked not being nice to say, get out of my life, or just give me a break. And that predatory person comes with gifts, or they come with really nice texts, like I miss you, thinking of you. I just found this beautiful rock that reminded me of you, or this, I bought you this wonderful necklace. I would like to give it to you. They all seem so nice. And then you feel like you need to reciprocate that nice, or to
They
not
count on that.
or to not be nice looks mean. And then you feel mean, and then you don't want to feel mean. So you feel like you've done something wrong. And then they capitalize on that feeling in you, that mistrust of your own sense of being able to say no. And then they hook you. Like, well, you know what? I just wanted to give you a gift. Well, you know what? I was just trying to offer you something, or just letting you know I was thinking about you. You don't have to be mean about it.
Well, I know that I know family. I know I've gotten a gift from a family member, and I have to remind myself that it's a gift and that I have no obligation with this gift, because this family member would love me to be obligated to them. If it's a gift, it should be a gift. But that's a bit bitchy of me to say. It's a bit bitchy that, I come and I give you a gift and you can't like come when I ask you to, or take a day off of your job and take care of me.
It's not very nice.
It's not very nice.
Something that I found is that, like, I am not good at everything. And I know it's a shock, but like sometimes people will ask me to do things and I don't want to say yes because I'm not really particularly good at it, but I get hounded and hounded and hounded. And then I say, okay. And then I fail because I'm not particularly good at that. And so I feel like I've been set up for failure because you're asking me to do something that I'm not that good at.
Yeah. And if I say no, it sounds like I'm not being very nice.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm being selfish.
Yeah, that's right. When really I feel like I was just set up for failure and they just needed to tick a box saying that, Jill's going to do this.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
And that's how they count on you not having this vocabulary. So, you know what? So let's flip the script and let's teach people, because, hopefully we have no predators in our audience and a whole lot of prey. So how do we teach you, our listener, how to not be nice? How do you learn how to not be nice?
How do you kill?
How do you kill nice? Death to nice.
Death to nice.
We are going to break it into a few phases. So like the first phase in my mind is understand that you are nice. Understand by nature and nurture, you're nice. And you only have a language for nice. And anything other than nice feels bad and wrong and foreign. And just because it feels bad and wrong and foreign doesn't mean it is bad or wrong. It probably still is foreign. Just like if you had never ice skated before and somebody strapped ice skates to your feet and sent you out on the ice, it would not feel right. It would feel very bad.
I would need one of the little pushy things.
Yeah.
You'd be awkward and clumsy.
Yeah, and you would be on your butt.
Yeah,
wet
cold.
butt, cold, wet butt most of the time. It would not feel normal or natural or good. And so there is one way through this, which is to practice, practice,
Yeah.
and then practice. So let's talk a little bit about, so first you're going to identify that this is your language, nice, that you don't have one not for nice. The second one, you're going to identify that you need to practice.
And that nice is kind of beautiful in you, surrounded by people who are nice back. But in this world, nice isn't going to protect you from predators.
No,
So-
and nice
and
is
that's the
gonna
thing.
and nice is gonna screw you over
Yes.
if a predator gets a hold of it.
Yeah.
And that predator will use your niceness like a prison, like a put you in a prison of nice.
Or if you're like me, who does have a bitchy side inside and has been trained to not be that little girl that took her backpack and punched back, maybe that side of you isn't so far off. Maybe that side is protecting you in a weird way. So in a way to almost trust that side. Even
Trust your gut.
Yeah, a little bit. Trust your gut. Trust that side of you that's like, no, I don't want to do that.
Well, and I love that because then you're stepping into a space where even though you've been told this is bad and wrong, it doesn't mean it is bad and wrong. So let's give some examples of how to, because I think in order for it to work, it's got to be sort of true to your value system. Because if you hit him in the head with your backpack,
violence is never the answer.
There might be part of you that's like, yeah, that's right. I got a boundary, and here it is with my backpack. And the other part of you as prey is going to feel like, I don't want to hurt people. I don't want to go around hitting and hurting people.
However, if this situation called for it and there is violence, it maybe you need to. Someone's going to violate your presence, your body. You're going to have to be uncomfortably
Good point.
tough.
Good point.
So it's not like that's out of place, because I'm sure there's a lot of women who've been assaulted, or men, and they don't want to kick the person. Well, you know what? Maybe you're going to have to.
Right. Or you don't want to call the police when your partner hit you.
Mm-hmm.
Or you don't want to ruin his reputation because, your partner is a police officer and you can't call the police on a police officer, so you imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Or you don't want to embarrass your partner at work when they, screamed at you. Or, think about Rihanna going to the awards show and coming out, getting beat up in the car on the way there. She might not have wanted to embarrass herself or embarrass. So there's all these reasons why we want to sort of be nice or be polite. And yet the person that will always pay for it is the prey.
That's right.
The prey will always pay that price. So what are some examples? Like, let's take some sort of less extreme examples.
Yes, we're not talking about violence.
But I do like that, Amber, I do like the idea that you mentioned about sometimes that does mean physical, not niceness.
And I will say, one of the places where I work, we have a policy around active attackers. If we're ever in a situation where there is an active attacker, it is, we tell our staff to respond. Either first, you run, you get out of that situation. If you cannot run, you hide. If you cannot hide, you fight. Run, hide, fight.
Okay, you know what? I love that.
Yeah, and that is more around violence. But I think also when you're dealing with predators, like, you can't actually deal with a predator. Run. If you cannot run, you hide, and if you cannot hide, you fight.
So I love that. Let's write that down.
Well, and I think too, like, even as a young woman, I remember times where I was at a club and a guy is sticking his tongue in my face. Like, in hindsight, you kind of think, well, how is that possible? But I could have physically pushed him away.
Mm-hmm.
I was too polite and nice.
Yeah, right.
So I would teach young women, men, doesn't matter who, young people, you have the right to go, this is my body. No. And use the word no, but also you can, if they're putting something inside of you that you haven't asked for, you have the right to push away from that, I would say.
And I think the challenge, like, let's talk about this a little bit, because I think that the challenge is not what we have the right to do or not do. I think the challenge is that whether or not we have the right to do it, you didn't do it.
I didn't do it. I was being polite.
Because you didn't have a language at the time. So even though we intellectually here's the thing.
And there is safety. Let me go back too. Yeah. I was also in a foreign country at the time, and this has happened. We can all, as women, even as young people, doesn't matter, that possibly I could have been unsafe if I pushed back.
Right.
Yeah.
So there is that potential that maybe to get out of a situation, you do have to pretend to be nice.
Run.
Yeah. Run, hide, fight.
Run, hide.
Run, hide, fight.
So rather than pushing back, I smiled, I kind of, and tried to make eyes with my friend. In hindsight, I wish I was a little more aggressive, like, no, thank you, or no. But why do I even have to coach it with a thank you? even in
Yeah.
hindsight.
Yeah.
Like
Well,
my instinct is no thank you, but why do I even have to say thank you?
but what
No,
about
thank
I
you
didn't
for your
really
tongue.
want that.
Oh,
I
your
didn't
tongue is
want that.
lovely. Yeah.
like I just wonder like even if we start with run,
Yeah.
like and this is where I think we get stuck as prey is, well, running would make it look like he did something bad and wrong. So I don't know that I want to run. I don't want him to feel bad. I don't want to make a scene. I don't want to. So all of a sudden there's this frozenness. Like, you see somebody in an elevator you don't want to get in with, but you get in anyways because you don't want the person to think you think that they don't look
Yeah.
respectable. So there's these ways that we use because we don't have a different language. So I want to go back.
Yes.
Let's talk about just even verbally right now.
Yeah.
Even just verbally, like Jill, I love the what is it? Run,
Hide.
Run, hide, fight.
fight, run, hide, fight. Okay, so I always love the idea that repetition is the mother of learning. So we're going to repeat that a few times. Run, hide, fight. Let's talk about a way of sort of fighting, but this is where I'm saying a way of fighting, but it has to kind of be true to your nature in order to sort of not beat yourself up for it. It has to be true to being respectful or to being nice, right? So you want to be able to say these things in ways that don't totally violate your own value system.
Or that they could go and like, if it is a court case, they can pull up the
Right.
text and go, see, you're a nasty bitch. You called me an asshole and a
Yes.
dick and
Yeah.
a whatever,
Yeah.
whatever,
Totally.
whatever. She's just as bad as me, or he's just as bad as her. We need a way that would, if my value, because I don't like name calling. It's true. I don't like name. Doesn't mean I don't do it on my private time.
But it's not your nature.
It's not my nature really to want to call somebody a name and to put them down. I might with my friends complain about somebody, and that's different. We're talking about to the person. Yeah, that isn't my nature. My value is we don't do name calling. So what do we say instead? What do we do instead?
I try to practice a few things. So one of my favorite things to practice is just repeating the last few words of what I heard the person say. So what that does for me is it gives me a little bit of time to think because I know that I'm nice and I tend to get drawn into it and I don't want to not be nice. So for example, like Jill, shoot me a question that say a predator might ask.
Where were you last night?
Where was I last night?
Yeah.
Last night?
Mm-hmm.
So just like that. So I just repeat what I heard the person say. It just buys me a little bit of time not to automatically tell the person. So the key for me is I practice this all the time. Now, this is actually a great skill in communication to practice because a lot of times the person will give you more information. So Jill, hit me again with that same thing.
Okay, where were you last night?
Where was I last night?
Yeah, I drove by the house and you weren't there.
I wasn't there.
No, I thought that you should have been home. You said you were going to be home.
I said I was going to be home.
Yeah, you did.
I did?
Yeah.
And now we leave silence. There's a ton of power. And so I don't have to respond. I'm still sounding really nice.
And you got a lot of information that this person is driving by your house.
You were driving by my house? And I could have said it like that. So that's one of the things that I practice that with everybody because it doesn't feel sort of not nice to me, but I also don't have to say anything. I don't have to give any information. And then I can let silence be very powerful.
And that silence is
good.
So even if the person's like, well, you're not talking, I'm not talking. So
That's
it's
very frustrating.
It's frustrating.
I'm frustrating.
And on that one is the second one I do, which sounds like you feel frustrated. And so I just keep making it about the other person, the other person, the other person. Now, with a predator, I've revealed nothing. I have not gone out of that sort of feeling of being nice, which I really love and feels like home to me. But I've probably frustrated the hell out of the predator because they haven't got any information.
What is the end result? That they will just get frustrated and walk away?
So then I think that's a great question. Then in that, because I'm not needing to answer the question right away, it gives me time to reconnect to that part of me that's like, which I lovingly refer to as like FU energy. That part of me that's like, I don't have to tell you anything. But by that time, I've already not told you a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
And so it just makes it a little easier for me to tap into then doing the second part, which is something along the lines of, I'm not feeling safe to discuss that right now, or that's not something I feel comfortable discussing right now.
Or just not replying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just silence.
Oh, man. Silence really works for me.
Or that doesn't work for me. You know, like I sometimes think that some people, some predators will take, if you say, I don't feel safe, they'll be like, well, how dare you say I'm unsafe? They take it as, because it is.
Right, right.
You are implying that but it's your experience. And any non-predator or a prey will hear, if someone had said that to me, if PJ says to me, hey, Amber, I just don't feel it safe answering that, I'd be like, oh, of course. Yeah, I don't want to violate that, rather than attack. So I think a lot of times you may not even use the word safe, even though you feel it. Just say, you don't have to answer it. Just say, I don't want to discuss that. You're allowed to have a want. You're allowed to not want to discuss something. That doesn't work for me.
That doesn't work for me. Yeah, I love that one too.
And that's one I want to keep using in my life. And I even at first, and now knowing the story that I told, sorry, that doesn't work for me. And I was like, no, I'm not apologizing that it doesn't work for me.
But see how we are just instinctively built to be nice. To like, and when we're not nice, we want to couch it with I'm sorry, please, thank you, maybe, if then, and that is where
they count on that.
And you cannot pull this out of your hat. If you are listening, you can't pull this out of your hat.
Unless you practice.
Has to be practiced and repeated. You have to practice this with your safe friends, with your safe family members, with your semi-safe coworkers, with your super unsafe boss or predator in your life. Before it becomes automatic, you have got to practice getting the nice out of you.
And prepare for the predator to be upset as well.
Absolutely.
And I'm not saying that we want to instigate a fight or to cause, them to freak out on us. The idea is for you to not reveal more than you're willing to reveal and not be nice. But I think you have to be willing. And in some ways, it's good, maybe if it's in text form, that they have a little freak out and then you have some ammo.
So, yeah. And one of the things I was going to add, there's two techniques that I want to cover too. Like one is called the broken record. Right. So two other techniques, like one is a broken record. You just keep repeating yourself.
That doesn't work for me.
That doesn't work for me. That doesn't work for me. That's not going to work for me. No.
Yeah, no again.
And again, you the broken record only helps you in that it's very clear and you don't need to think of a whole bunch of things to say. It's just a broken record.
Another one that works for me is I can't speak to that. So if they're bringing up stuff that...
Yeah, that's a good one.
And I did that recently. I was like, I can't speak to that. And then they were going off about something that they had seen. And I was like, I can't speak to that.
Or that's not my impression of that person. I use that often.
The last one that I wanted to cover that I think is so important is what I refer to as use your legs. And if you don't have legs, if you have one leg, you use crutches. And if you have no legs, you use your wheelchair. You get out. Yeah. So the situation I remember with a predator once, I was in a situation where the predator had asked to speak to me, and I had said, I am willing to speak only with witnesses present. So the person had agreed, and I had witnesses present. So, people had taken their time to be present. Two other people had taken time to be present at this thing this person had wanted to kind of talk to me about. And within the first, I would say 2 or 3 minutes, that person had been sort of used gaslighting, had used some very demeaning language. So within the first minute or two, even though people had sort of taken their time out, we had met at a place, we had, waited 2 or 3 weeks to have this moment. As soon as that behavior occurred, gaslighting and demeaning behavior,
You knew things were not going
well,
in a healthy direction too.
I just stood up.
Probably. Good.
I stood up. I thanked the people for their time. Thank you so much for your time as witnesses here. I no longer allow myself to be abused.
Mm-hmm.
And I left.
What a bitchy move.
What a bitch. Oh my word. But I felt so proud because I was kind to the people who took their time.
So you didn't go against your own values.
Yeah, I was nice. And
in the proper best way.
Yeah, and I used my legs because it became really clear that nothing, whether I was nice or not nice, nothing was going to go well. And so the other piece that's really important when you're dealing with a predator is that your niceness is never going to get you anywhere. And all that you can do with, even the tools and techniques that we've talked about, all that's going to do is buy you a bit of time or not look bad for like court or something, right? But at the end of the day, most of the time when you're dealing with predators, you are going to have to use your legs. You're going to have to get out and get away.
And if needed, you call the police.
Up 100%.
Yeah. 1,000 billion %. Yes.
And because this is where, once again, that predator uses your, niceness against you. You don't want to embarrass them or yourself or other people or cause trouble. And so I think that's where, if you can use some of those tips and tools and techniques, I think that you will be able to kill the nice, but it'll take practice and it'll take time, and use the people around you for support. And if you tell them what you're doing, I think that they'll be very supportive.
Kill the nice before.
Good.
Yeah, kill the nice before it kills you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
I think this is a very helpful lesson for so many of us out there in the world who want to operate on nice, and nice is not always what's going to work for you or your body or your family or anything. So thank you for listening. Thank you for being a part of this journey. #PrayPower. Come back for another podcast, another episode. We love having you listen to us. So thank you.
Sure do. Thanks, guys.